Om Madhuvatadhatayate Madhuksharanti Sindavaha Madhvirna Santoshadihi Madhunaktanutoshasi Madhumadpartivagum Rajaha Madhudyaurastanavpita Madhumanovanaspatir Madhuman astasuryaha Madhvirgavo bhavantunaha Om Madhu Madhu Madhu. Om. May the winds blow sweetly, may the rivers flow sweetly, may the plants and herbs be sweet to us, may the nights and dawns be sweet to us, may the dust of the earth be sweet to us, may the heavens be sweet to us, may the trees be sweet to us, may the sun shine on us sweetly, and may the cows yield us sweet milk. Om. Sweetness, harmony, peace. Good morning and happy almost Thanksgiving. Now, you wouldn't expect a Vedanta talk, especially one right before, just days before Thanksgiving, especially one with the very subject heading of Thanksgiving, to begin with the words, last month when I was at the DA's office, you heard that right, last month when I was in the district attorney's office, the district attorney asked the representatives from the faith traditions to come together and join together to address and talk about some of the issues that we deal with as a community, that we deal with individually, or whether we deal with as a nation. And I was just stunned about my own ignorance, because we only know what we encounter, right? And there is plenty that I had encountered, but so much that I hadn't encountered, or maybe I had encountered it, but I just didn't see it, I didn't recognize it. So the DA asked us in the faith community to listen and talk together and then bring it back to you. So I thought, great, no better time than Thanksgiving, right? So here we are. This is what we need to talk about. And it sounds counterintuitive, but it shouldn't be, because we shouldn't mistake Thanksgiving for a feel-good, bring on the whipped cream and the turkey kind of a holiday. I mean, for a lot of people, that is kind of their holiday. But in the end, they're just going to have a turkey carcass in the garbage without the spiritual food that we all need to nourish us and sustain us. That's what we need. So having a day devoted to simply eating a lot of food and watching the Twilight Zone or the game is not going to help us face the challenges that we all face as individuals, as members of a family, as members of a faith tradition or the larger community, as just being simple human beings. It won't help. I mean, it's fun. It's great to have a one day all being together enjoying it, but it won't go, it'll remain a surface holiday. No one is an island. John Donne, the 17th century poet, and later in his older age became an Anglican minister, wrote, "No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a part of the main. Every man is a piece of the continent. If a piece be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less." So why are we part of the main? How are we part of the continent? Well, as Vedantists, we say, forget the part, we are the continent. In fact, we are the universe. We go further than that. It's like, what's the universe? Tat Tvam Asi, thou art that. We are that infinite divine Brahman, that infinite all-pervading existence, and we're united in and through divinity. That is the deepest part of our nature. Everything else changes. But that is the one real truth of our life, of all existence. that infinite divine reality that unites us. That is the real truth of our life. We forget it more than we remember it, alas. But when we do remember it, that is when we're thinking correctly. And when we act on it, when we act as if we know it, that's when we're the happiest. That's when we're living in joy and living contentedly. And that's when we're in tune with the rest of the universe. That's when we're the happiest. It's not that like hee happy sort of joy. It's the joy that comes with living the truth, of being peaceful and contented and living in tune with the rest of the universe. Now that doesn't mean that everything is hunky-dory. It doesn't mean that everything is hunky-dory or everything is going to be hunky-dory. It can't be. We live in the world of Maya. This world is a mixture of sand and sugar, good and bad, pleasure and pain, happiness and misery. And for every part of one side of the coin, we get the other. For pain, we also have pleasure. For every joy, we have sorrow. You don't get one part of the equation without getting the other as well. You know, at Thanksgiving, we sort of like to take a day off from our headaches and our heartaches. But, you know, we're so busy all the time, we never look deeper. We're always so rattled, just trying to just like, oh my God, I got to do this, I got to do that, I've got to do that. We're so busy, we don't allow ourselves the time to take a deeper look. And Thanksgiving can actually be a quiet day because the stores are closed, so you don't have to turn on the TV. We can have a time when we can actually do some self-examination and look deeper into our lives. Thanksgiving, because we're just skimming the surface. But Thanksgiving allows us, it's about giving thanks. It allows us to take the time to reflect on the deeper truths of life, to allow us to look more deeply into our own life and see what it teaches us. Because Thanksgiving, or giving thanks, can't be just about, I give thanks for what's good in my life. I give thanks for what I'm enjoying. Well, that is good in what it is. We have so many blessings that we never really account for. The fact that we're all here, it's like we're on the surface of the planet, good. We're well enough to be here, wonderful. We have families and friends, what a blessing. We live in a beautiful community that's committed to a lot of wonderful things. That's fantastic. We have our bodies and our minds. We live in love. What a gift. These things that we don't acknowledge so much of the time. The fact that we're allowed to drive to work and cuss the four-way stop, the fact that we can get there, what a blessing. For some people, we have water, we have running water. We have enough food. We just take these things for granted until we don't get them, like during our emergency where we didn't have water for 3.5 weeks. When your water finally comes back, oh my God, water. And then you'd never take that water for granted. So much of what we have, we just take for granted. The majority of the world can't just turn on their tap and get drinkable water. You got to really wonder, if they have a tap at all, what's coming out of it. Most of the people don't have the luxury that we have. But giving thanks shouldn't be just about saying thank you to what we like and what we think is good in our lives. Giving thanks is about saying thanks to the whole shebang. The good, the bad, the ugly, the difficult, and the painful. At Thanksgiving, we have an opportunity to dig deeper and to look for the hidden gifts that life has given us. We often don't understand what our gifts have been and what they will be and what they are. The good and the not so good, the painful and sometimes the really, really painful. Sometimes the obstacles that we have been given that we don't know if we can overcome. The hurdles that we don't know whether we can rise above. These are sometimes our greatest gifts because we wonder if we can overcome them. But the truth is, with grit and by the grace of God and our own determination, we can overcome them. that doesn't mean the end result is going to be the one we had in mind. But it will be the right result. It will be what should happen at that time. You know, Enrique, he's our gardener, our groundskeeper, our resident genius, our Hispanic Mr. Rogers. He and I are obsessed about weather. It's very important to us. It has a lot to do with our daily life. So, and he's this wonderful, sunny, optimistic person. So last week, beginning of the week, he said, we've got some rain coming. And I said, yeah, well, Wednesday they're talking about a possibility of rain. He said, look, I am not the one who should be talking to you about having faith. And I said, Enrique, I have full faith that what should happen will happen. I know that what is supposed to happen will happen. That may not be what I want to happen, but I know that what will happen is what is going to happen and is what should happen, whether I like it or not. So whether we like it or not, everything in our life is a gift. Everything. The good and the bad and the ugly and everything in between, all of it is a gift if we take it in the right spirit and if we have the courage to face it squarely and not run away from it. Everything can be an instrument for our spiritual growth if we have the courage to face it squarely in the face. Swami Vivekananda famously said, face the brute. Well, that's because when he was in Varanasi, he was a wandering monk. And Varanasi is an old city, and the oldest part of the city has these narrow alleyways. And Varanasi, like some other parts of it, are inhabited by these wild monkeys. And they can be big, and they can truly be vicious. Davy Pran and Border Pran and I encountered them ourselves. We've had firsthand experience with monkeys. They're not all cute. So he was walking down an alleyway, and they started to chase him. So he started walking faster, and they chased him faster. Finally, he saw them, and they were ganging up on him. He started running, and then they started going after him and biting him and pulling at him. He was terrified, as anyone in their right mind would be, because they are vicious. A voice he heard a voice overhead that said, it was a sadhu who was above him on the wall above him. These are really old, narrow roads. And he said, face the brutes. So Swami Vivekananda turned around and went, ha! And they screamed and ran away. Well, ain't that a metaphor? Ain't that a metaphor? You know, when we have difficult times in our lives, we often have an instinct to run away from it, to avoid it, because we want to run away from what gives us grief, what triggers responses in ourselves that we don't like. And instead of dealing with the difficulties right as they are, we try to run away from them. But that is really not good for us. We think that our peace and tranquility will be in that hole that we're trying to find, but we end up being like rabbits pursued by hounds. We think that if we just get ourselves into that hole, we'll be happy, and that's where our peace and our tranquility and our joy is, right in that little hole. But in fact, our peace and our joy and our tranquility is in going back and chasing those hounds right back to where they came from and dealing with the problem right there. Right there. That is where our peace and joy is. Because it's not in what we're running to, it's what we're running from that we have to face. Whatever our brute is that we have to face, that is what our gift is. That's our thanks and thanksgiving. Dealing what we need to deal with. When we face our brute, when we turn around, we gain strength. We gain faith in ourselves. And these are the most important things that we can have in spiritual life. In Sanskrit, it's called Shraddha. which means faith in ourselves, faith in our spiritual teachers, faith in the scriptures, faith that we can be able to overcome any obstacle, because Shraddha also means grit and determination. If we have that, we gain strength, we gain self-respect, we gain fearlessness. And what we face, we may not end up with the outcome that we want, but we end up with strength and fearlessness. And what a greater gift could we have than that? What greater gift could we have? Because the very things that we find most difficult, those are the things that often will give us the best result after we've dealt with them, after we've learned the lesson that we need to have from them. That's the gift. And of course, it's not easy, but nothing worthwhile in life ever is. Learning Sanskrit isn't easy. Learning the oboe. You can't learn to play piano when you play 3 seconds here and there. You can't learn a language. You can't meditate if you do like 1 minute here, 1 minute the next week. Nothing in life is worthwhile unless you're willing to put your time and energy and thought and commitment into it. Spiritual life is a perfect example. Relationships are a perfect example. That's what we have to have. So much of our energy is spent running away from what we fear that we end up so unhappy because we live in fear. We're afraid of something that's going to leave us helpless. Whether that something is someone leaving us, one way or the other, through death, through them just walking out on us. Truth is, they're all going to leave us one way or the other. You're afraid they're going to die? Guess what? They will. You might first. Absolutely no question, it's all going. You're afraid that you'll end up homeless. You're afraid you're going to live on the street, live in your car. Face the brute. Okay, what happens if that happens? Will I be changed? Will the real me be different? No. Maybe we're afraid of Alzheimer's, losing our mind. Okay, face it. What happens? You know what? We'll all be just fine. We've got a number of people here, several of our nuns and a number of devotees. Are they the same person as they ever were? Absolutely. Are they as smart as they were? No. Does that make a difference in how much we love them? Not at all. Because what is real in us is not the body. That is going to go 100% of the time. Boom, gone. Our mind, going to go. It will absolutely go. How long can you hold on to it? Well, genes and exercise, work on it. There are some things we have no control over it. Get over. Does that mean we will live in fear now? No. Face the brute. Okay, if I get Alzheimer's, so what? Swami Ashokananda, one of the most brilliant swamis of our order, had several strokes. It left him with sort of a childlike mind. And one of his outspoken disciples said to him, "Swami, it's so terrible what's happened to you. You used to be so smart." And he said, "What does it matter? I'm not the body or the mind. I am the spirit." Now that's a person who's put in his time in spiritual life. Absolutely fearless to the last second. And joyful for who he was, which was absolute pure spirit. That's the way to live our life, not in fear, not creeping around waiting for something to jump out of the bushes at us. No, face the brute. When we face the brute, we always remember that within us is infinite strength, infinite capacity, because our real nature is divine. Our real nature is eternal and unchanging, and nothing can affect that. Our body will die, our mind will weaken and go away. That infinite divinity within us will never change. It is unborn and undying. Weapons cannot kill it, water cannot drench it, fire cannot burn it. Alzheimer's will not touch it. Neither will being out on the street. but that infinite strength is within us. When we remember that, we get so much strength because we realize we can overcome everything because nothing can touch that within us. So we are given so many blessings in our life. But the greatest blessings sometimes are those challenges that we have to face, whether we like it or not. One thing a Vedantist never says is, why me? What? Real Vedantists don't whine. You know how real men don't eat quiche? Real Vedantists don't whine. Why me? Because I ordered on Amazon with a one-click ordering. It arrived the next day. Why me? Because my own thoughts and actions sent it to me. Whatever my actions were, those have come back to me just like I ordered it. There's no reason for me to whine about it. No reason for me to say, why me? Because I ordered it. I ordered that pizza myself without pepperoni and lots of mushrooms. We did the action, we get the result. Very simple. Swami Vivekananda wrote a wonderful poem called No One Else to Blame. No one but me to blame. It kind of says it all. It said, every day my life I make or mar, each deed begets its kind. Good, good, bad, bad. The tide once set, no one can stop or stem. No one but me to blame. Love comes reflected back as love. Hate breeds more fierce hate. Don't we know that? They meet their measures, lay on me through life and death their claim. No one but me to blame. Sometimes our challenge in life is to deal with ourselves and to deal with our own minds. And sometimes the actions that we've done come back to haunt us. Not only through people who say, oh my God, you did that, or maybe our own memories, our own minds, bringing us grief or remorse, regret. And as far as remorse and regret, that's healthy to the extent that we apologize to whoever we've wounded, if that's possible. Apart from that, guilt is never good. It's not healthy. It doesn't help things. What is healthy is to say, I will try with all my might never to do such a thing again. Pray for the grace of God to have the strength to do it, and make a promise to the universe to that effect. But we have to deal with the facts that we've all made mistakes in our lives. To dwell on it in guilt is so unhealthy. We have to remember that these very mistakes that we sometimes rehash and think, God, I wish I hadn't done that. I should not have hurt that person that way, has a way of making us a better person. Rather than dwelling on it, remember that these have helped us in the long run. Swami Vivekananda said, do you believe that you could be today had you not made those mistakes? Bless your mistakes then, for they have been angels unawares. He said, blessed be torture, blessed be happiness, because we learn from them both. The truth is, we remember more from pain than we do from pleasure. We kind of take the pleasure for granted. It's when someone kicks us in the shins that we go, ow, wonder why that happened. So we have to be grateful for the challenges and the obstacles and all the hurdles that we've had to face, and we will face, because without them, we'd be useless. We'd totally be useless. We wouldn't have any moral muscle mass. We've learned from them. When somebody wants to make something with clay, have you ever seen a potter putting something on a wheel when they make things? If you take it out from after that, it's really soft. It's kind of useless. When you put it in that 5,000 or 10,000 degree oven, that sets it. So we can think about that as another wonderful metaphor. We have to go through that fire in order to be really set, in order to be able to face the challenges that we face, in order to be of service of others. When we can do that, we can really be of service to others, because we've been through that. We have been through that forest. We know the way. So happy Thanksgiving, right? This is, this is the real thanks that's hidden in Thanksgiving. Strength and fearlessness, and to be able to look at life squarely in the face and say, okay, I'm on it, I'm with you. To be able to look at life in the face without whining, without self-pity. We don't look to the heavens and ask someone up there to fix it. We look into our hearts and remember that infinite strength and potentiality is within us, and we can overcome whatever we need to overcome. Again, it may not be the way we had in mind, but by doing that, we develop that strength and that fearlessness within us that gives us such resilience and compassion for others. What more could we ask for in life? To be able to live fearlessly in strength and compassion, what a Thanksgiving gift is that? We can never forget the divinity at the core of our being. That is what gives us the greatest gift in our life. Remembering that and remembering always to see it at the heart of every being that we encounter. You know, when I think of that first Thanksgiving, I think of the amount of courage that it must have taken for these two groups of people to be able to meet. You can just imagine the English settlers looking at those Native Americans and thinking, ew, they do not smell so fine. They're looking at their clothes, their language, perhaps they're unkempt. They're looking at how they live, and they're thinking of them as savages who cannot even be so intelligent as to speak English. And how the Native Americans looked at the English settlers. Oh, these people who are invading our lands? Nice. You can imagine the feelings they had toward each other. Somehow they overcame that and sat down together and shared. What huge amount of obstacle did they go through to be able to fearlessly sit with one another and share their food? I mean, that is stunning. Get the Hallmark images out of our minds. You know, get that picture of the turkey with the bouquet of flowers off. That was a lot of moral courage to be able to do that with people who are threatening your lives on both ends. What courage. I like to think that maybe some trust was established. Maybe they realized that what united them was more than what divided them. Maybe they were able to see each other as human beings who had the same love, the same fears, the same challenges that they had, who loved their kids, who wanted to see their children grow to be adults. Maybe they could see that. Maybe some initial trust and friendship was established. What a huge gulf to overcome, to meet in, Thanksgiving. Real Thanksgiving, because both the Native Americans and the settlers had gone through terrible times. They'd both been starving. They'd both had disease and been wasted by winter. What a terrible previous winter they'd gone through, but they met in friendship. Now, if the Native Americans and the English settlers can do it, you know what? So can we. So can we, because we really have to look over those boundaries that we have to cross ourselves. Because the natural human tendency is to stick to our own. We like to be around people that we agree with. The people who have our same ideas, have the same political or social ideals that we do, people who mirror back to us our own values, and then we separate ourselves from those people that we think are wrong or stupid. We don't have much to do with them. If the Native Americans, the English settlers can do it, so can we. Because we shouldn't think that we are so much more advanced than those English settlers or the Native Americans back then. Because we exclude people, either consciously or unconsciously. We don't want to be around people who are too different, and we don't want to be around people who rile us, who get us angry. And they get us angry because they're wrong. They rile us. So we stick to ourselves. My family in Texas, the red part don't talk to the blue part, and the blue part don't talk to the red part. They stay separate because they might have some uncomfortable times actually treating each other as equal human beings. Especially now we live in extremely contentious times. But it's up to us to make a difference. We've got to get off our high horse and not see people in terms of red or blue or other divisive labels that we like to throw at each other. Because if we can't react and learn from the divinity and see each as divine, if we can't do it, how can we expect anyone else to do that? If we can't be the ones to take that first step forward, how can we expect anyone else to make that step? It's up to us, all of us. Now, what happens when we don't see the divinity in others? Can you feel the DA's office coming on here? What happens when we don't see the divinity of others? Well, we don't see correctly. Why don't we see others correctly? It's more subtle because we don't think correctly. We're not thinking in an appropriate, correct way. We get blinded by our opinions and our passions. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Kama esha, Krodha esha, Rajo guna samudbhavaha, Mahashno mahapapma, Vidyanam varninam, passion and anger. Know these to be your two enemies that will destroy you. No one has an angry action without an angry thought. And we can't think about it as their problem. It's our problem. It is our problem. If any of you can say that I've never had an angry thought or hostile emotion, raise your hand right now because I would love to meet you. Okay, you and I will have a little talk, Rose. Angry thoughts, angry emotions can lie hidden right below the surface. And then they pop up in unexpected ways. The problem was shame. Well, before I'd say that, this is the problem of not thinking correctly, which leads into inappropriate action, is kind of what landed us in the district attorney's office. We were all asked to bring to the table a problem that we thought needed addressing. And I brought up something that we all encounter, which is the problem of homelessness, mental illness, drug addiction, that all seem to form this triumvirate that creates such a heartbreaking problem. And other people brought up other problems that I was completely unaware of. For example, the fact that our first responders are suffering from terrific, terrible PTSD. Our beloved first responders, the ones that we depend on, they're more likely to die of suicide than in the line of duty. Our firefighters that we make heroes of, they're suffering terribly. I had no idea, because we lionize the people who run into the gunfire. These are the people who are more likely to take their own lives because their standards for themselves are so high. And in our community, the DA said, when I used to go to meetings of other DAs throughout the country, they'd pat my arm and say, "Oh, DA of Santa Barbara, tough job. Oh, how's the beach?" Now they come up to her and say, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Because we have the Isla Vista shootings, then we go out into fire after fire after fire after fire with all the mudslides and the devastation, and they're called and called and called to be bigger than they, and have to see and deal with things that we will never have to see. I remember one of the sheriffs came and he said, "I never thought I'd have to see things like that." And they rise to it to serve us. So we have to put our heads together about how we can serve them and give them the respite that they need. Another problem I never knew of, truancy. Think your kids are going to school? Maybe not. Huge growing problem. Who knew? Man. So we were all asked as a group, so what do you think is the big problem that Santa Barbara, for example, and other cities need to deal with? And we all thought, gangs, violence. They said, no way. Barely makes a tick on our scale. I was like, really? She said, you know what our biggest problem is? You know what our biggest problem here is? Domestic violence. I was stunned. We all might know one or two people who've gone through it, and we feel, oh, good, so glad you got out of that situation. None of us know that it is the biggest problem here. Not only us, according to the World Health Organization, as of last week, it is a growing epidemic of worldwide proportions. Half the women killed are killed because of domestic violence. It's growing exponentially. Okay, well, it cuts through every religious group, spiritual or not, every age, every economic bracket, every educational bracket, every race, every community, equal opportunity catastrophe. So rather than us pointing at those people, oh my God, and thinking, oh, those people are like Martians, how could they do that? We need to look at our own reactions and see where the problem lies. Because human beings are human beings. And the problem isn't just in, we can say, the uptick of domestic violence. It's the uptick of violence across the board. School shootings, hate speech, racism, divisiveness of all sorts, shame, hatred, fear, all these things. Hate speech that has allowed more people just yelling at each other more and more. What is the root problem? The root problem is that we're not thinking correctly as human beings. Now, the problem with all emotions is that they are contagious. It's very subtle, but if you're around a person who's depressed, you start feeling like, ugh, you feel the weight. If you're around a person who is happy, you feel happy. If you're around a person who's irritated, you get irritable. If you're around a person who's always angry and frustrated, you start feeling that. It's like the balls knock against each other, and pretty soon we get propulsion. So we have to be on the alert for that. We have to get off our high horses and stop thinking of, oh, those people, but rather look inside ourselves to see where these roots of thinking are. Because as human beings, we have to look at each other, because there can be no act of violence without a thought of violence, and all things start very subtly. There is violence of shaming people. That's violence. Social pressure, where it becomes suffocating, is violence. Speaking to a person in order to hurt their feelings is violence. Obviously, verbal abuse is violence. Swami Vivekananda in Raja Yoga, when he talks about ahimsa, nonviolence, said that jealousy and envy are violence of thought. Every act of hostility, anger, comes from a tiny seed within the mind. And somehow that seed is given food and water. So we have to watch ourselves that we do not feed and water that seed. So rather than pointing the finger out and saying, those people who would hurt somebody, point the finger here and think, what am I doing in my thoughts to contribute to this situation? And when I find someone who is suffering or discover someone, what am I doing to remedy the situation? And there are, FYI, there's plenty of organizations here that are available to help. But the problem, of course, is that the problem of, for example, domestic violence, is that, as our Unitarian minister pointed out, the subject is drenched in shame. So it's not reported. Why isn't it reported? Because it's so shameful. She said her own long-term friend of 30 years, who's a well-bred, highly educated, wealthy family, she had no idea until her friend ended up in the ER with all of her ribs broken. She was the DA. She didn't know her own friend was going through it. Why is it drenched in shame? Sri Ramakrishna said, shame, hatred, and fear are some of the biggest obstacles in spiritual life. Well, what about day-to-day life? Day-to-day life, practical life. If we have a problem of any kind, unless we bring it to the light of day, how can we address it? How can we deal with a problem if we allow it to fester and get infected and feel that it's somehow shameful? None of it's shameful. What's shameful is allowing the hurt, whatever that hurt may be, to continue. That is what's shameful. We have to be there for one another, or else we are not human beings. We're united in and through divinity. And unless we act on our principles, the word is good as atheists. We have to act on our principles. Being unkind is an act of violence. Holy Mother teaches us no one is a stranger. The whole world is your own. That doesn't mean for the people who just agree with us. She herself had an encounter. She was in her room and she heard this terrible woman screaming at night, so she ran off her balcony. Sarda Devi, Holy Mother, was extremely modest, never showed her face in public, always kept covered, always kept quiet, always would give messages to people because she was very bashful. She went on, "What are you doing to that woman out there?" Stopped it dead in its tracks. That's because she knew that within the heart of every human being, both the perpetrator and the victim, have divinity lodged in their hearts. And if this is allowed to continue, it wounds both. So we cannot allow our brothers and sisters to suffer without us doing some sort of an intervention if we're aware of it. The violence isn't just that kind of violence. It's the violence of thinking which friends are mine, the violence of hatred, the violence of divisiveness and demonization of people that don't agree with us. That's violence. There's only one divinity that unites us. We are united in and through divinity. If we see division, that's our problem. It's our wrong thinking, and that kind of wrong thinking leads to real repercussions. Because our feelings and our thoughts are as contagious as the flu. All root of all hostility is not recognizing the divinity within ourselves and the divinity of others. If we can take that first step of doing it, what a wonderful, joyful life we will have. Swami Vivekananda said, all hatred is killing the self by the self. He said, therefore, love is the law of life. To rise to this is to be perfect. You know, none of us may be perfect, but at least let us rise to at least try to get to the level of remembering the divinity within each and every one of us. We can't otherize other people. And especially at Thanksgiving, it's good for us to remember that first Thanksgiving, how hard it must have been. Thanksgiving that reminds us that what holds us together is love. What holds us together is love. And that real love is the love in and through divinity, or the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. The wife loves the husband, not for the sake of the husband, but for the sake of the self, the divinity within the husband. The wife loves the husband, not for the sake of the husband. In other words, it's the parents love the child, not for the sake of the child, but for the divinity within the heart of the child. We love nothing but the divine the entire time. That's what we have to remember and respond to and react to when we see other people. So we should remember that, especially at Thanksgiving. Especially then. What a better time than Thanksgiving than to remember that. That means that we want everybody to be loved, everyone to be protected, everyone to be safe, and everyone to be cherished, not just those that agree with us. So giving thanks for Thanksgiving doesn't mean we get to ignore the world, because we all live there. It means remembering, as the Ishu Upanishad says, everything in this world is covered by God. Isha vasimidam sarvam yat kinsha jagatat jagat. Everything in this universe is covered by the Lord. Now, one of these days, we'll realize it ourselves. Meanwhile, let's go out of our way to try to remember it. Thank you. And let me conclude with a chant. Join me if you can. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Utacchate Purnasya Purnamataya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman flows all that is. From Brahman flows all, yet Brahman remains the same. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all. And again, I'd like to wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving and express our profound thanks for every one of you. Happy Thanksgiving.